The training hall echoed with the sound of bodies hitting the mat. Crashed down hard for the third time that hour, his breath knocked from his lungs. Above him, the massive reptilian figure of loomed, easily 8 feet tall with scales that glinted under the harsh lights. "Get up, human," hissed, his forked tongue flickering between sharp teeth. "Or is this the legendary Earth warrior spirit we heard about?" Laughter rippled through the watching cadets. Most were aliens, members of species that had walked the stars for thousands of years. Humans were the newcomers here, barely 5 years into their membership with the Galactic Coalition. Many still questioned whether they belonged at all. Forced himself to his feet. Every muscle screamed in protest. The species were built like tanks, with triple the muscle density of humans and bones that could stop a knife blade. Fighting them in hand-to-hand combat was like fighting a truck. "Again," called instructor from the sidelines. The older human's face was carefully blank but could see the tension in his jaw. Knew this was unfair, but academy rules were clear. All cadets trained together, regardless of species differences. Raised his fists and tried to remember his training. Speed, he told himself. Humans were faster, more flexible. He could use that. He darted forward, aiming a quick jab at its midsection before dancing back. Didn't even flinch. The punch that could have dropped a human barely registered against his armored scales. This backhand, however, was devastating. It caught across the chest and sent him sprawling. "He runs like prey," laughed from the sidelines. The other cadet was constant companion, along with the third member of their group, Vex. All three had made life miserable for weeks now. "Enough," said finally. "Medical check, go to the med bay." Limped off the mat, trying to hold his head high. Behind him, he heard his voice carry across the hall. 5 years and they still send us these fragile things. What were the coalition thinking? The medical bay was quiet and smelled of antiseptic. Minu, the human medical officer, ran his scanner over his chest and frowned. 2 cracked ribs. That's the second time this month. "I'm fine," said automatically. "You're not fine, you're being targeted." Minu applied a healing patch to his chest. The medicine would speed his recovery, but he would still be sore for days. "You need to report this." "Report what?" "That I lost a sparring match," shook his head. "The academy doesn't care. They think this builds character, natural hierarchy of species or something." Minu's expression darkened, but he said nothing. They both knew the truth. Humans were at the bottom of the ladder here. Prove yourself or get crushed trying. The door to the med bay slid open. Walked in carrying a tray of food from the cafeteria. She was small even for a human woman, barely 5'3", with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything. "I brought you dinner," she said quietly, setting the tray on the table beside bed. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," she sat down in the chair next to him, "but I did anyway." They had known each other since childhood on Earth, growing up in the same district of Seoul. When the coalition had opened applications for the military academy, they had applied together, had dreams of becoming a pilot, had never said exactly why she wanted to join, but she had passed every test with perfect scores. "How bad?" she asked, nodding at his bandaged chest. "Not bad. I'll be fine in a few days." His eyes were cold. "This has to stop." "Don't get involved," said quickly. "Please. If you start a fight, they'll expel you. The academy has zero tolerance for that. And they have infinite tolerance for bullies." "That's different, that's training." He tried to smile. "I can handle it." Looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. But she didn't promise anything, and that worried more than he wanted to admit. After she left, Minu handed a painkiller. "Your friend cares about you a lot. We grew up together, she's like a sister." "She's also dangerous," Minu said quietly. "I've seen her medical files, the things she can do." "She won't do anything stupid," said, but he wasn't sure he believed it. That night, lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling. Through the window, He could see the stars spinning slowly as the Academy station rotated. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue world that had only just started reaching toward those stars. He thought about quitting. It would be easy. He could go home, find a normal job, live a normal life. Nobody would blame him. Humans weren't built for this kind of competition. But then he would think about why he came here. Not for glory or honor or to prove anything to the aliens. He came because when he was a boy, he had watched the Coalition ships arrive at Earth for the first time. He had seen the vastness of the galaxy open up before humanity, and he had wanted to be part of it, to fly between the stars, to see what was out there. He wasn't going to let and his friends take that away. Across the station, in another wing of the Academy, Instructor sat in his office reviewing incident reports. The files on his screen made for grim reading. Equipment sabotage, deleted study materials, training accidents that seemed to target specific cadets, all of it carefully skirting the line of what could be officially punished. Had served in the Coalition military for 15 years before becoming an instructor. He had fought in 3 border wars and earned medals that now sat in a box under his bed. He knew what real warriors looked like, and it had nothing to do with size or strength. Had the spirit. The kid refused to quit, no matter how many times he got knocked down. That was worth more than all the muscles in the galaxy. But spirit wouldn't protect him if things escalated, and could feel the tension building. Something was going to break soon. He just hoped it wouldn't be one of his cadets. In her quarters sat cross-legged on her bunk, eyes closed, breathing slowly. She could feel it inside her, that sleeping giant that Dr. Sora had warned her about. The thing that made humans different, special, terrifying. She pushed it down, locked it away. Not yet, not unless she had no other choice. But if they hurt again, if they pushed too far, she would show them exactly what humanity could do when their friends were threatened. And the galaxy would remember. The next week was worse, much worse. Arrived at his morning training session to find his locker broken open and his equipment missing. The spare suit he borrowed from supply had been tampered with. The temperature regulator failed during a vacuum drill, leaving him shaking with cold for 20 minutes before anyone noticed. When he reported it, the duty officer, a 4-armed named, simply shrugged. Equipment malfunctions happen, Cadet. Be more careful. His study files disappeared from the Academy network. 3 months of notes on biology and stellar navigation gone. When he tried to recover them from backup, he found the backups corrupted too. He would have to start over from scratch, and exams were in 2 weeks. Another human cadet in his squad found him in the library at midnight, frantically trying to rewrite everything from memory. She sat down across from him without asking. She said bluntly. He's bragging about it to the other, says he's teaching humans their place. I know, didn't look up from his work. You need to report this. To who? He doesn't care. The Academy thinks this is character building. Clenched her fists on the table. This isn't character building. This is harassment. Maybe, finally looked at her. But if I complain, I look weak. If I quit, I prove them right about humans. The only way forward is through. Studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but you're not alone in this, remember that. But felt very alone when he walked back to his quarters that night. The corridors of the Academy were quiet during the night cycle, lit only by emergency lighting. His footsteps echoed off the metal walls. He didn't see the 3 figures waiting in the shadows near his door until it was too late. Lost little human stepped into the light, his scales gleaming, and Vex moved to flank him, blocking the corridor. His heart hammered in his chest. Just going to my quarters. Not yet, smiled, showing far too many teeth. We need to have a conversation about respect, about knowing your place. I have just as much right to be here as you do. Laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Rights? You think you have rights? Your species barely learned to leave your planet. We were crossing the galaxy when your ancestors were living in caves." "That was then," said, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is now." "Is it?" Vex moved closer. "I think now is when we teach you a lesson, the kind of lesson you won't forget." His mind raced. He could try to run, but were fast despite their size. He could fight, but 3 against 1 was impossible odds. He could scream for help, but the corridors were empty and sound didn't carry far in the station's compartmentalized sections. He raised his fists anyway. If they were going to hurt him, he would at least make them work for it. Then the station's alarm cut through the air. "Emergency drill for the zero-gravity training section. Not here, but close enough that security and instructors would be moving through the area." His eyes narrowed. "Lucky," he hissed. "But your luck won't last forever, human, remember that." They disappeared down the corridor as quickly as they had appeared, slumped against the wall, his legs shaking. That had been close, too close. He should report it. He should tell or Minyu or someone. But what would he say? "They threatened me." They hadn't actually done anything this time. The academy would probably tell him to handle it himself. When finally reached his quarters, he found waiting outside his door. She took one look at his face and her expression went cold. "What happened?" "Nothing, I'm fine." "Don't lie to me." Her voice was quiet, but there was something hard underneath it. "I can see it in your eyes. What did they do?" Told her. He was too tired to lie, too shaken to keep it bottled up. When he finished, was silent for a long moment. "This ends," she said finally. "No, you promised you wouldn't get involved." "I never promised that. You asked me not to and I nodded. That's not the same thing." "Please, if you fight them, you'll be expelled. Your whole future, everything you worked for, it'll be gone." She looked at him with those dark, serious eyes. "And if I do nothing, what happens to you?" Had no answer for that. The next day, the cadets had a scheduled zero-gravity combat simulation. It was held in Observation Deck 7, a large spherical chamber where gravity could be turned off for training. The exercise was supposed to teach them how to fight in space environments, how to move in 3 dimensions without up or down. Tried to focus on the training, but his mind kept drifting back to the night before. He kept expecting to make another move, but the seemed content to watch him with a predatory smile. Then pulled him aside during a break. Her face was pale. "I just saw talking to. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. The cameras in this section are going to malfunction during the next drill." "What?" "They're planning something. You need to get out of here. Fake an injury, anything." But before could respond, instructor called them back to formation. The next drill was starting. Looked around frantically, but there was no way to leave without drawing attention. The gravity cut off. The cadets floated in the center of the sphere, adjusting to the disorienting sensation of weightlessness. His voice came through their helmet speakers, giving instructions about proper form and movement. Then was called away to another section. A power fluctuation, someone said. Nothing serious, but it needed his attention. He would be back in 10 minutes. The moment he left and his friends moved, they used their jets to push away from the main group toward a corner of the observation deck. None of the other cadets seemed to notice or care. Tried to activate his jets to escape, but they didn't respond. Sabotage, just like his temperature regulator had been. "Nowhere to run now, human," said. His voice came through the helmet comm, which meant everyone could hear, but no one was coming to help. "This has gone far enough," said. "If you hurt me, you'll be expelled." "Who says we hurt you?" smiled. "This is a training accident. These things happen. Humans are so fragile, it's tragic, really." Grabbed's arm, his grip like iron. Vex seized the other. They held him in place while floated closer. "Your species doesn't belong here," said. "You're weak, soft. You make the coalition weaker by existing in it. It's time someone did something about that." The first punch knocked helmet against the wall. The second cracked the faceplate. Tried to fight back, throwing wild punches that bounced harmlessly off scales, and Vex held him tight while worked him over methodically. Was screaming into the comm, calling for help, but the instructor was gone, and none of the other cadets seemed willing to interfere. Felt ribs crack, felt blood fill his mouth. His vision was starting to blur. Through his cracked faceplate he could see drawing back his clawed foot for a kick, a killing blow aimed right at his exposed head. Then the door exploded. Not opened, not breached. The reinforced military-grade door simply disintegrated into a cloud of metal particles that glittered in the zero gravity like deadly stars. Floated in the doorway. The air around her rippled strangely. The gravity plating beneath her feet showed cracks spreading outward in a web pattern. When she spoke, her voice was perfectly calm. Step away from him. Time seemed to slow down. The cloud of metal particles from the destroyed door drifted lazily in the zero gravity, each piece catching the light like a tiny star. The other cadets floated frozen in shock, staring at the impossible thing they had just witnessed. Released and turned to face this new threat. For a moment, confusion crossed his reptilian features. Then he laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the helmet comms. "You," he said, "you think you can stop us, little female. I've crushed opponents twice your size." Didn't answer. She pushed off from the doorway with one foot. The metal beneath her crumpled like paper. She floated forward slowly, and everywhere she moved, the air seemed to shimmer and distort. And Vex released, letting him drift away. They moved to flank, the three of them forming a wall of armored muscle and scales. In zero gravity, their mass was an advantage. They could use their bulk to crush and pin. They had trained for this. Last chance, said. Leave now and we'll forget this happened. His response was to take another push forward. This time, her movement was faster. The observation deck's windows groaned under sudden pressure. Fine cracks began to spread across their surface. Smile vanished. He activated his jets and charged forward, moving with the terrible speed that made feared as shock troopers across the galaxy. His fist, capable of punching through armor plating, came at like a missile. She caught it with her open palm. The kinetic energy had to go somewhere. The entire observation deck shuddered. Every window simultaneously spiderwebbed with cracks. Warning alarms started to blare. Squeezed, scales, evolved to deflect knives and small arms fire, crumbled under her grip like dried leaves. His battle roar became a shriek of pure pain. Then she lifted him. All 450 pounds of reptilian muscle, armored scales, and pride. In zero gravity it should have been easier, but she did it with one hand, with perfect control. And she threw him. Crashed through a reinforced console on the far side of the deck. Sparks exploded in a cascade. The console, designed to withstand combat damage, simply folded around him like tinfoil. And Vex stared for one frozen second. Then survival instinct kicked in and they attacked together. Honor meant nothing. This was about staying alive. They were trained warriors. They moved in perfect coordination, one high and one low, using their jets to build momentum. Their claws extended, sharp enough to tear through metal. Together, they represented enough force to overwhelm a combat mech. Moved like water. Claw slash passed through empty air where she had been a microsecond before. Vex's grab caught nothing but vacuum. She flowed between their attacks with movements that shouldn't have been possible, like she could see the future, and was simply stepping out of the way of everything they planned to do. When she counterattacked, it was surgical. A palm strike to center mass. The impact traveled through his body like a shockwave. He shot backward, crashing through the wall into the adjacent corridor. The reinforced bulkhead that was supposed to contain the combat deck simply failed to stop him. Vex saw his opening and lunged. Spinning kick caught him mid-leap. There was a sound like a thunderclap. Vex cratered into the ceiling with such force that the metal bent inward around him. He hung there for a moment, then fell, unconscious before he even started drifting downward. The entire fight took 11 seconds. Emergency bulkheads slammed down across the observation deck. The safety systems had detected catastrophic structural damage and were sealing off the section before atmosphere could be lost. Red lights bathed everything in a bloody glow. His face suddenly went pale. The strange distortion around her faded. She pushed off a wall and floated quickly to where drifted, blood leaking from his broken faceplate in floating red spheres. Her hands shook as she checked his pulse. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please stay with me." The security team arrived through a side entrance, weapons drawn. They took in the scene with wide eyes. 3 cadets down, 1 human woman hovering protectively over an injured human man, and enough structural damage to require a complete deck rebuild. A senior human cadet who worked security shifts was the first through the door. His eyes went wide when he saw what happened here. "They were killing him," said quietly. Her voice was steady, but tears ran down her face. "I stopped them." Behind, a security officer reached for his weapon, quickly stepped between them. "She's not a threat. Look, she's trying to help him." Medical teams arrived. Minyu pushed through the crowd and went straight to. His scanner showed critical injuries: cracked ribs, internal bleeding, concussion, and a fractured faceplate that had exposed him to decompression. "Get him to medical now," Minyu ordered. Then he turned to, "You too, you're hurt." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding from your eyes, ears, and nose. You're not fine." Minyu's voice softened. "You did what you had to do, now let us help." As they carried away on a stretcher followed. Her legs wobbled. Each step looked like it took enormous effort. The other cadets parted before her like water, fear and awe mixing on their faces. Within an hour, the entire academy knew what had happened. The footage from a backup security system had captured everything. It spread through the station like wildfire. Humans were supposed to be the weak ones, the fragile ones, the ones who barely qualified for admission. This human girl had just destroyed 3 trained warriors in 11 seconds. Admiral, the who commanded the academy, watched the footage in his office 3 times. Each time, he saw something that shouldn't be possible. He had fought in wars across the galaxy. He had seen every species' best warriors in action. Nothing moved like that girl had moved. He called an emergency meeting of the senior staff. "Tell me what I'm looking at." Dr. Sora, the human assigned to the academy, took a deep breath. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." "You're looking at what humans really are when someone threatens those they love." That night, as recovered in medical and sat under guard in a holding cell, instructor gathered all the human cadets in a small briefing room. Their faces were a mixture of fear, confusion, and pride. Spoke first. "Is it true? Can we all do what did?" Was quiet for a long moment. Then he sealed the door and activated a privacy field. What he was about to tell them was classified at the highest levels. But after today, the secret was going to come out anyway. "Sit down," he said. "It's time you learned the truth about why humanity was really admitted to the Coalition." He brought up a holographic display. It showed Earth, 50 years ago, when the first Coalition scouts had made contact. Then it showed the assessment fleet that had come after, testing humanity's military strength by attacking an isolated colony. "We were supposed to be easy targets," said. "One colony, 3,000 civilians, mostly farmers and families. They sent a raid force expecting to crush us in hours." The display showed the battle. Human soldiers fighting with desperate courage. And then, as civilians were threatened, something changed. Ordinary people, parents and teachers and children began displaying abilities that physics, strength that shattered armor, speed that blurred, endurance that seemed impossible. "The lost 40% of their forces," said quietly, "to 3,000 humans defending their homes, and that's when the Coalition realized we weren't normal." He explained it all: the hysterical strength response, the adrenaline evolution, how humans, when protecting those they bonded with, could temporarily rewrite their physical limits, how every human had it buried deep in their genes, waiting for the moment when everything they loved was at stake. Most humans can't control it, continued. It only activates in genuine life or death situations, and it comes with a price. Afterwards, the damage to the body can be severe. But controlled it, said a young cadet. She made it happen. Is special. She's one of maybe a dozen humans who have learned to trigger the response consciously. Dr. Sora has been monitoring her for years. Each time she uses it, it damages her body in ways that might be permanent. The cadets sat in stunned silence, finally asked the question they were all thinking: so what happens now? Looked at them with sad, tired eyes. Now the galaxy learns what we really are, and we find out if they can handle the truth. The tribunal chamber was packed. Representatives from a dozen species filled the observation galleries, all wanting to witness the hearing that would determine not just fate, but possibly the future of all humans in the coalition. Sat in the front row, his chest still bandaged beneath his uniform. The healers had worked miracles, but he would carry the scars for the rest of his life. Beside him, and the other human cadets formed a silent wall of support. At the defendant's table sat perfectly still. She looked small in the large chamber, wearing a simple gray uniform. Her face was calm, but could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Dr. Sora had told him the truth. Each time used her abilities, it shortened her life. She had paid a terrible price to save him. Admiral presided over the tribunal, his 4 arms folded across his chest. To his right sat Commander, the senior officer who had flown to the station as soon as he heard his nephew was injured. To the left was Ambassador, the senior human diplomat assigned to Coalition headquarters. This tribunal will determine whether Cadet used excessive force in defending Cadet, Admiral announced. Commander, you may begin. Stood, he was older than but just as large, his scales marked with battle scars. What we witnessed was not defense. It was a savage attack by a human who lost control. My nephew and his companions are in critical care, their bodies shattered. One may never walk again. He activated a holographic display showing injuries. They were extensive and brutal. The audience murmured. Cadet could have simply restrained them, continued. She could have pulled them away from Cadet. Instead, she chose overwhelming violence. This is not the behavior of a trained warrior. This is the behavior of a beast. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the section of the gallery. Ambassador rose to respond. She was an older woman with gray streaks in her hair and eyes that had seen too much. May I present evidence to the tribunal? Nodded, activated her own display. This is footage from Observation Deck 7 over the past month. The hologram showed sabotaging equipment. It showed deleting files. It showed Vex tampering with temperature regulators. This is communications data. Messages appeared, showing bragging to other about his plans to injure during training, to make it look like an accident, to drive the humans out of the academy by making an example. And this is security footage from the night Cadet was cornered in the corridor. The holograms showed everything. The threats, the intimidation. The only reason nothing happened was the emergency alarm that drew security to the area. The gallery was silent now. This was not a training accident, said quietly. This was premeditated assault. Cadet was targeted, harassed, and finally attacked when the perpetrators believed they could act without consequence. They sabotaged the cameras. They waited until the instructor was called away. They planned to kill him. Slammed his fist on the table. Even so, the response was excessive. Look at what she did to them. Would you prefer she let them kill her friend? His voice was cold now. Because that's what was happening. Medical analysis shows Cadet was minutes from death when Cadet intervened. Held up a hand for silence. I want to hear from the cadets themselves. Cadet, you witnessed the incident. Tell us what you saw. Stood, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger. I tried to warn. I saw talking to officer about the cameras. I knew something bad was going to happen, but I was too slow. She described watching helplessly as and his friends beat, how she screamed for help but no one came, how she thought her friend was going to die right in front of her. Then arrived. She didn't attack randomly. She gave them a chance to stop. She told them to step away. They chose to fight her instead. Next came who about's earlier boasts. He said humans were pollution in the warrior culture. He said someone needed to do something about it, that it would be easy to make death look like an accident because humans are so fragile. The evidence mounted. Security logs showing the camera sabotage. Communications showing Commander had known about his nephew's harassment campaign and done nothing. Medical data showing the extent of injuries before intervened. Finally, Admiral called to testify. She stood and walked to the center of the chamber. In the harsh light, she looked even smaller and more tired, but her voice was steady when she spoke. I didn't lose control, she said. I was completely aware of every strike, every ounce of force I used. I held back. Scoffed, you call that holding back? Turned to look at him directly. Your nephew and his friends are alive. Their spines are intact. Their skulls are not crushed. If I had wanted them dead, they would be dead. I calculated exactly how much force would stop them without killing them. Against, that's not a gentle amount, but it was precise. She paused, then continued. I've trained my entire life to control what I am. Dr. Sora has monitored me since I was 12 years old. Every time I use my abilities, it damages my body. I'm bleeding internally right now. I have torn muscles and fractures I'll be feeling for months. I knew the cost when I made my choice. Then why, asked, why pay such a price? Because is my friend. Because what they were doing was wrong. Because if we let bullies decide who belongs among the stars based on strength alone, we doom the galaxy to endless war. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of aliens who had never seen a human as anything but weak. Belongs here not because he's strong, but because he refuses to give up. That's the real warrior spirit, not size, not power, the determination to stand up even when you know you'll be knocked down, the courage to reach for something greater than yourself. His voice grew stronger. I'm not sorry I saved my friend. I would do it again. But I am sorry that violence was the only language those three understood. I'm sorry that we live in a galaxy where might makes right and the strong prey on the weak. We can be better than that. We should be better than that. She sat down. The chamber was silent. Dr. Sora took the stand next. She presented medical data showing the damage had suffered. Internal hemorrhaging, microfractures in her bones, torn muscle tissue. She would need weeks to recover, and some of the damage might be permanent. This is what happens when a human forces their body beyond normal limits, Sora explained. We call it hysterical strength, but that term doesn't capture the reality. It's an evolutionary adaptation that lets us protect those we love at the cost of our own bodies. She brought up historical data, showing the battle 50 years ago that had led to humanity's coalition membership. The gallery watched in stunned silence as ordinary humans displayed impossible abilities defending their colony from raiders. Every human has this capability, Sora continued, but most never access it. It requires genuine threat to someone they've bonded with, is unique because she's learned to trigger it consciously. But she's not special. Any human in this room could do the same if someone they loved was in danger. The implications sent ripples through the gallery. Humans weren't weak. They were sleeping giants, harmless until provoked. Called for a recess. The tribunal would deliberate for 1 hour. During the break, finally got to talk to. They sat in a small room under guard, facing each other across a metal table. You shouldn't have done it, said. You might have destroyed your whole future. You are my future, replied simply. If you die, what's the point of anything else? I'm not worth what you've sacrificed. She reached across the table and took his hand. Yes, you are. Don't you understand? You're the best person I know. You keep getting up even when the whole galaxy is trying to knock you down. You believe we can do this, can be part of something bigger. That belief is worth protecting. Tears ran down his face. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep fighting. Say you won't give up. That's all I need. I promise. The hour passed too quickly. The tribunal reconvened. Admiral stood to deliver the verdict. This tribunal has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We find that Cadet acted in defense of another cadet's life. While her response was severe, it was proportional to the threat faced. Relief flooded through. However, continued, cadets and Vex are hereby expelled from the Academy for premeditated assault. Commander is removed from his position for conspiracy to harm a cadet and failing to report harassment. Roared in protest, but security was already escorting him from the chamber. Furthermore, said, his voice carrying across the shocked gallery, the Coalition will implement new protocols regarding interspecies conflict and harassment. No cadet will be targeted for their species characteristics. No culture is superior. No warrior is measured by their strength alone. He looked directly at, you showed us what true courage looks like, not in dominating others but in protecting them. The galaxy needs that lesson. Case dismissed. The news spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. On dozens of Coalition worlds, people watched the tribunal footage and saw humanity in a new light. The species they had dismissed as weak newcomers had hidden depths. Those fragile-looking creatures with their soft skin and small bodies could become something terrifying when their loved ones were threatened. The reaction was mixed. Some species viewed humans with newfound respect, others with fear, but nobody thought of them as weak anymore. In the Academy medical bay, lay in a recovery bed while machines slowly healed the damage she had done to herself. The doctors said she would recover fully, but it would take time. Dr. Sora visited every day, checking her progress and adjusting her treatment. You got lucky, Sora said during one visit, reviewing scans. The damage is extensive but not permanent. Another few seconds of fighting and you might have torn your heart muscle. It was worth it, said quietly. I know, but you can't keep doing this. Every time you push your body beyond its limits, you risk not coming back. Looked at the older woman. Then teach me to do it better. Teach me to control it without destroying myself. Sora studied her for a long moment. Why? Why is this so important to you? Because someone has to be able to protect us. Humans are new here. We're outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1 by species that have been crossing the stars for thousands of years. It's right that we belong here, but belonging isn't enough. We need to prove we can stand alongside anyone. That we're not just weak mammals who got lucky. You know that's not why we were admitted. I know, said. We were admitted because the Coalition was scared of what would happen if they left us alone. Scared we'd develop into something dangerous. So they brought us in where they could watch us. But fear isn't respect. I want us to be respected. Sora sighed. I'll talk to instructor. Between us, maybe we can develop a training program that lets you access your abilities without killing yourself in the process. But no promises. That's all I ask. Down the hall was also recovering. His physical injuries were healing quickly thanks to Coalition medical technology, but the emotional scars would take longer. He had nightmares about those moments when Sfoot was coming toward his head, knowing he was about to die. Visited often, bringing him updates about what was happening in the Academy. The atmosphere had changed completely. Species that had ignored humans before now treated them with cautious respect. The training schedules had been revised to account for physiological differences. Instructors were cracking down on any hint of harassment. It's like everyone suddenly remembered that we're all supposed to be on the same side, said, sitting on the edge of his bed. They are quiet now, Some of them actually apologized. Can you believe that? It shouldn't have taken nearly dying to make that happen, said bitterly. No, it shouldn't have. But it did, and now we have to decide what to do with this chance. What do you mean? Leaned forward. The coalition is watching us now, really watching. They want to know what else humans can do. Some of them are scared, some are excited, but they all want answers. We can use that. We can push for real changes. Or we can paint an even bigger target on our backs. Maybe, but isn't that better than being invisible? Thought about that for a long time after left. She was right, he realized. Humans had spent 5 years trying to fit in, trying not to make waves, trying to prove they belonged by being as much like everyone else as possible, but had shown a different path. She had been undeniably, powerfully, terrifyingly human, and the galaxy had noticed. A week after the tribunal was finally cleared to leave medical, he walked slowly through the academy corridors, still sore but healing. Other cadets nodded to him as he passed. Some even stepped aside respectfully. It was strange and uncomfortable. He found in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. She still moved carefully, her body healing but not yet whole. When she heard him approach, she smiled. Hey. Hey yourself. He sat down beside her. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a shuttle, you. About the same. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. I brought you something. He handed her a data pad. She took it curiously and activated the screen. It showed an official document from the Coalition Academy Board. What is this? Your commendation, said, for exceptional courage in defense of a fellow cadet. It comes with a full scholarship, priority selection for advanced training programs, and a formal apology from the Academy Board for failing to protect us from harassment. Stared at the document. They're giving me awards for nearly killing 3 cadets. They're giving you awards for saving my life. There's a difference. She set the pad down and went back to looking at the stars. I don't feel like a hero. I feel tired. You don't have to be a hero, said gently. You just have to be you, that's enough. They watched the stars in silence. After a while, spoke again. Do you think we made things better or worse? Better, said without hesitation. Before, humans were invisible. Now we're seen, that's progress. Even if what they see scares them. Especially then, fear means respect. They'll think twice before hurting us again. Considered this. Maybe, or maybe we just started something we can't control. The door opened and instructor walked in. He looked at them both and smiled slightly. Good, you're together. I have news. What kind of news? Asked. The Coalition High Council has made a decision about the human program. They're not shutting it down. They're expanding it. Both cadets stared at him. They want more humans in the academy. They want to study us, yes, but also to integrate us fully into coalition military structure. And they've asked me to help develop a new training program. What kind of program? Asked. One that teaches humans to work with their natural abilities instead of suppressing them. One that acknowledges our differences instead of pretending we're just like everyone else. You too will be the first students. Felt something stirring in his chest. Hope maybe, or purpose. What about the other species? Will they accept this? Some will, some won't. But that's not your problem. Your job is to prove that humans can be trusted with power, that we're not beasts who lose control, that we can be both strong and principled. Looked at them seriously. What happened in that observation deck is going to define how the galaxy sees humanity for generations. You can either let it be a story about violence and fear, or you can make it a story about protection and sacrifice. The choice is yours. After he left and sat together, processing everything, the weight of what they represented felt overwhelming. They were no longer just cadets trying to get through training. They were symbols of their entire species. I don't know if I'm ready for this, said quietly. Nobody's ever ready, replied. but we'll figure it out together, like we always have." She smiled at that. "You know what the weirdest part is? A month ago, I was worried about failing exams. Now I'm worried about the future of human-alien relations." "Yeah, your life got complicated." "Our lives," she corrected. "You're not getting out of this. You're the one who refuses to quit, remember. You're going to be right there beside me, showing everyone that humans belong here." "I can do that," said. "I'm good at being stubborn." They sat together as the station rotated slowly, bringing new stars into view through the observation windows. Somewhere out there, Earth hung in space, a small blue world that had only recently reached for the cosmos. And on that world, billions of humans lived their lives, unaware that two of their own had just changed everything. The next morning, new human cadets began arriving at the academy. They came from all over Earth, volunteers who had heard about what happened and wanted to be part of something bigger. Some were athletes, some were soldiers, some were just ordinary people who wanted to reach for the stars. Organized a meeting for all the human cadets, old and new. They gathered in a large briefing room, nearly 50 people now instead of the original dozen, and stood at the front, feeling awkward and unsure. "So," said, addressing the crowd, "I guess we should talk about what happens now. Anyone have thoughts?" A new cadet raised her hand. Her name was a former martial artist from "I heard what you did, taking down 3, that was incredible." "It was necessary," said. "Not incredible, just necessary." Another cadet, a young man named, spoke up. "Are they going to expect all of us to do that? Fight like you did?" "No," instructor said, entering from the back. "We're going to teach you to fight like yourselves. Some of you might develop the ability to consciously trigger your enhanced state like. Most of you won't, that's fine. Humanity's strength isn't just in raw power, it's in adaptability, creativity, refusal to accept defeat." He walked to the front and stood beside and, "You're pioneers, the first generation of humans to truly integrate with galactic society. You're going to face prejudice, challenges, moments when you want to quit, but if you push through, you'll open the door for millions of humans who come after you." The cadets listened intently. In their faces, saw the same mix of fear and determination he felt every day. "We're not asking you to be heroes," continued. "We're asking you to be yourselves, to show the galaxy what humanity really is. Not weak, not savage, just people who care deeply about each other and refuse to let our loved ones suffer." After the meeting ended and walked back to their quarters together, the corridors were busy with cadets from a dozen species, all moving between classes and training sessions. But now, when humans passed, the aliens acknowledged them, nodded, made space. "Do you think we can really do this?" asked. "Live up to what they expect?" "I think we can try," said. "And for humans, trying is usually enough. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten." She laughed at that, then winced slightly, still healing. "You know what? I think you're right. We're going to stumble, make mistakes, probably cause a few more diplomatic incidents." "Definitely," agreed. "But we won't quit. We'll keep pushing forward, keep proving we belong, keep protecting each other." That's all anyone can ask. They reached the intersection where they would part ways, heading to her quarters and to his. Before she left, turned back. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being worth saving, for giving me a reason to be strong." "You don't need a reason. You're strong because that's who you are." She smiled. "Maybe, but it helps to have someone to be strong for." She walked away and stood watching her go. Around him, the academy continued its eternal routine, training, learning, growing. But something fundamental had changed. Humans were no longer invisible. They were no longer just the weak newcomers struggling to keep up. They were humanity, and the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that meant. In his office, Admiral filed his final report on the incident. He wrote about the tribunal, the evidence, the verdict. But in his private notes, he added something else. We have lived in a galaxy defined by strength for 10,000 years. The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the natural order we have built our civilization upon. But today, I witnessed something that challenges that order. I saw a being risk everything not to dominate but to protect, not to conquer but to defend. And I saw that in that moment, she was stronger than all our warriors combined. Humanity will change the coalition. Of this, I am certain. Whether that change is for better or worse remains to be seen. But I find myself hoping it is for the better. We have been strong for so long, perhaps it is time we learned what it means to be good. He sealed the file and looked out his window at the stars. The future was coming, carried on human hands that reached toward the cosmos with determination and hope. And despite his concerns, found himself looking forward to seeing what they would build.